So hello and welcome. My name is Henry Gordon Smith. I am dialing in from Dubai. I would really like to hear where you're dialing in from so that I can know who you are and what you're all about. I see some familiar faces or some familiar names, so feel free to just comment and say where you are and what you do and anything you want to share about yourself. And you're welcome to do that so that we can get to know each other. And then as a reminder, you can use the Q&A feature if you want to ask me questions, or I believe I'm actually able to invite you to speak in some cases. I can allow you to talk. So if you make a comment or something like that, I can also allow you to talk and you can ask your question. So again, thank you so much for being here. This is the first of our new every other week, so bi-monthly Ask Us Anything Agritecture webinars. Now we're doing this in relation to Agritecture Designer, but you're going to have different team members every time talking about different topics. Sometimes we're going to be demonstrating a part of the software at the beginning, and sometimes we're going to have our partners being there. But really, it's an Ask Us Anything webinar. So the opening presentation will be maximum 10 to 15 minutes, and then it's totally open. Hi, Keith. Guten Tag. Wie geht's? Alles gut? I hope so. As I mentioned, I'm here in Dubai. So I wanted to begin a little bit with the story of Agritecture Designer so you understand why. Why did we build the world's first farm planning software? Why did we build a place that you can learn the best practices and plan these farms, especially since we are consultants already? So we already solved those problems on the consulting side. So why did we do this? And so for me, it goes back to when I was a young college student and I was thinking about vertical farming. Now, as some background, I was in 2011, 2010, I was really excited about urban agriculture. I sort of saw some pictures of it online. I was just figuring out the climate change challenge as a possible way for me to work in. And I was able to find some information online, but not a lot. Now, fast forward, I went to Columbia University and I studied sustainability management. And unfortunately, at Columbia University, there were no classes on vertical farming. And so basically, I was struggling to get all the knowledge I wanted. But there was someone at Columbia University that had the knowledge I wanted, or at least I thought, which was Dr. Dixon DePommier, author of The Vertical Farm. And he is considered sort of the modern father of vertical farming because he wrote a book called The Vertical Farm. So at Columbia, I created a course called Challenges in Vertical Farming, which was my own course that I created. And I asked Dr. Dixon DePommier to be my advisor. And so he agreed. And so we started a course. And so for me, it was very important that through this course, I would design a vertical farm and I wanted it to be feasible. So this is 2013 for the record. Okay, so 10 years ago. Actually, yeah, 10 years ago, May, probably. I started actually in the spring semester. So probably right about now, Dr. Dixon and I in person, Dr. Dixon DePommier and I in person, we're getting into the course and how we're going to make it work. And we started having this debate because I wanted it to be feasible, meaning I wanted it to fit a specific site in New York City. So I was traveling around New York, looking at sites, and I was very curious, like, is vertical farming industrial? Is it commercial? How expensive is it? What can be grown? All of that. And so I want it to be feasible. Now, Dixon DePommier is a visionary. His book is about, towers of farms and all of that. And so as I started designing it, I faced a couple of issues as I was looking at it. And actually, this is my final report that I submitted as part of my January 2013. So this is literally 10 years ago that we're talking about. So this is the model vertical farm that I designed. So I found a site in the Bronx. I looked at 50 different sites and I considered what the fit was. And I designed this farm under the advisement of Dr. Dixon DePommier. Now, Dixon thought it was too small. He's like, make it taller, make it taller. But this was like all that was allowed with the zoning. It wasn't allowed to be that tall and it was a light manufacturing site. So it made sense. And I did a pretty good job at the time. I'm going to show you all of it. We can look at it later if you want to look it up or you want to ask me for it. But I did a pretty good job sort of answering questions about where it would fit, how much it could grow. But I had huge problems finding yield data and actually getting accurate information on the costs to produce in the farm. There was just nothing available in 2013 that could do that. And so this is really a big part of how agritecture as a whole began. I mean, the blog existed, but as far as the consultancy and eventually the software, this is how it started. And I really wanted to help other people not have the same challenges I had. I want anyone anywhere to be able to plan feasible vertical farms or greenhouses or urban farms and get the data that they need. And you can sort of see here is the methodology I put here, right? Identifying the problem, collecting and analyzing data, researching the site, choosing your systems, designing integration. So this is kind of the early stages of the methodology. Now, fast forward, we built a consulting business around answering these questions. We've done hundreds of feasibility studies for greenhouses and vertical farms around the world, and we provide that service. But for some people, feasibility studies and consulting is not the right fit. You're just looking for data. Maybe you're a student doing a project. Maybe you want to just do something that already works versus reinventing something totally new, which means going to the suppliers. So that's when, during COVID in 2020, we built Agritecture Designer, and we launched it in beta to test it out. And the idea of Agritecture Designer is that you can go through all of these steps and answer all the questions that I struggled to answer at a much lower cost than consulting, much faster. We try to be 10 times faster and 10 times cheaper. So this is the future of planning these farms as I see it. So in order to do that, we had to bring all of this data on yields and crops and technologies and how different market conditions drive that and create a methodology within the platform. So I'm not going to demonstrate the whole thing today because every single webinar, we're going to show you one small feature. But I want you to understand why we built it. We built this because we are so passionate about people finding the right solutions and the best practices to build these farms based on validated data so that more of these farms can happen. Because in the end, it's everyone else that's going to build the farms. And we want to help thousands and thousands of new farmers get developed. So you can look at the website. If you're already a member, that's great. But one of the things I wanted to show you was a new feature recently launched, which is the ballpark estimate tool. Now, within the software, you can do complex advanced models that get into a lot of detail of yield, energy, water. You can even refine details a lot more if you join our Pro plan, which is $149 per month. And in our Light plan, you can actually test some of those features and do lighter versions of that. But even by just going to the site, you can do a ballpark estimate for free. And so this is a new contribution to the industry that no matter where you are, let's say you're in a discussion with your team about a potential expansion. Let's say you're doing a simple report, or let's say you see something in an article that is claiming a certain investment cost or whatever, or you're just curious about what you could do with a site, what's possible within it. So with the ballpark estimate tool, we simplified our calculators to the absolute basic. So I can choose between vertical farms, greenhouses, and container farms. Let's do a vertical farm, because today I actually had a conversation where I used the ballpark estimate tool with a real estate developer. And so a real estate developer contacted me. They said, we've got this unused building in Connecticut, and some people are saying indoor farming is what we should do with it. But, oh, 1 second. Excuse me. I'm just getting a call. Yeah, I think, sorry, that was an error. Nadeem, can you just tell David that it's not the link in the calendar, but it's this webinar? Because that's what he's calling me about. Excuse me. So here we can look at the vertical farm. And this question again from the developer was, what can I do with this space? Is it feasible? What's possible within it? And so they just wanted to know sort of like how much it could cost. So you can choose one of your crops. Again, we've got some of the main crop categories. You can choose your level of automation. In this case, it was in Connecticut, so it's probably going to be medium automation level because labor's pretty pricey there. And then the site size. Now, their site size was massive. It was 250,000 square feet, okay? So if you click this button, you then get a very high level estimate of the economics for this. And so obviously there's a lot of dependencies that can drive the costs up or down. But this is basically the typical estimate for a vertical farm for a site of this size of site size footprint. And remember, all along the way, there's little information things that are going to guide you through understanding this. So this is the most high level estimate. Okay, so this is where you begin. And then if you want to go further and you're a member of the software, you can actually get into more detail and talk about where the site is located, and you can start to build a more detailed model. Okay, and so this is now going to start me off to go into a more detailed model. Again, this part isn't free. The other part is free through the ballpark estimate. So you can see now, because I'm a member, it brought me in and it started to give me a much more detailed estimate of the business, which is not making money yet because I need to refine some of the aspects of crop pricing. I probably need to update some of the energy rates and labor rates, but this starts to get me an initial estimate and tells me key economic metrics about it. So again, no matter where you are, you could use the ballpark estimate tool for free. And that is the first feature I wanted to showcase, in addition to explaining how Agritecture Designer was born, why we built it, and what our hope is for the future with it. So with that said, I will just stop and answer any questions you have. I can demo other features. I can answer any questions, but that was the one I wanted to show you today. So I think you can raise your hand. I see your hand raised. Hi, Keith. Do you mind introducing yourself and telling us a bit about yourself and asking your question? You don't have to do camera on if you don't want to. It's totally up to your comfort level.
Yeah, sure. I don't mind doing camera, but I don't have the option available. So I'll just start speaking. So I'm Keith. I'm in Germany right now, and I own a farm in Burkina Faso. So that's in West Africa. First, can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay. So we've just started the farm, and we're still testing the system. It's a NFT system, and we want to grow leafy greens because during half of the year there's a gap in the market, and we just want to bridge that. So my question is, does the software take into consideration the price differences between countries? Because I know that the capital costs like wood or some metals or knittings, pipes, it's a very different from the prices I've seen when I'm in Europe or in North America. So do your database differentiate that, like between regions, the prices between regions?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, really cool and nice to meet you. And what a interesting and rare location to be looking at this. So I just want to confirm, you're thinking about a vertical farm or a greenhouse? Vertical farm?
I am talking about a greenhouse. So now we're just growing horizontally.
Okay, so let's just very quickly talk about this to answer your question in a different way, okay? So let's just build a very high level model for you right now. I'm just going to answer these questions really quickly so you can see how quickly it's done. And I'll explain what it can do relative to your question of CapEx and what it can't do, because it can do some of that. Is there a city in Burkina Faso, a town that we're talking about here?
This is Ouagadougou. O-U-A-G-A.
O-U-A-G-A.
Yeah,
there
right
it is. Okay, great. So Keith's cool greenhouse. Okay, awesome. Okay, so that's our location. Now, when I click the location, the first customization will happen is it'll bring in weather data. Okay, so climate data is automatically brought in. So whether it's whatever the extreme temperature is, we've taken it from public weather data sets, climate data sets to put that in there. So that's already accounted for. However, you still need to make key decisions about this. So if you're in a place like Burkina Faso, one of the questions we're going to look at is automation. And like automation, I would recommend probably low because the cost of labor is low and you don't want to create a product that's too expensive. So this is one way to do that. So this is the first way we're going to adjust the CapEx. So when I click low, my CapEx is on the lower end. Okay. You can choose your currency. I think for today's exercise, we're going to keep it the way it is. But let's do it in meters probably.
Yeah. I deal in meters. Yeah.
If you're doing a quick estimate, it's easier just to do an owned one versus looking to rent because some of these are more complicated, right? So if you're just looking for the estimate, you do own to begin with.
It's 5,000 square meter.
5,000?
Yeah.
Okay. So we typically recommend you include things like your head house and your circulation. And you said you're looking at lettuce?
Yeah.
Okay. And let's just pick an FT system for simplicity. Now, typically you would have a variety of crops, or not necessarily, you might have different crops, but this is just for estimation purposes and efficiency on today's call. Now we get to the next question, which is insulation level. There's also going to be differences in CapEx, right? So insulation you want to determine based on your climate, but let's go with light duty here. Okay. I'm not sure if we're going to need heating, but again, that's going to
it's the opposite.
And the CO2 injection is also going to change our CapEx. So when I remove these things, my CapEx is already going down. I'm making some trade-offs there, but it's going down. Now, grower question is more about OpEx. But if some people for farms that are smaller, they're their own growers, some people hire their own, et cetera. So we typically recommend you think about who that grower is. Well, let's say you're going to hire a grower. Let's just say, yes, you're the own grower, because I don't want to add the price of the grower yet. You can do mid experience. I don't know what the farm worker rate is here, but it's like, looks like it automatically brought in $2 from our database. So that's pretty low. And then you can say self-funded to make it simpler. If you choose equity or debt, you can put in some of that information. Okay. And then this has the typical or whatever rates. Sometimes we have the data for your market, sometimes we don't, but these are the typical, whatever rates that you need to override. You need to change them, right? So your energy rate, et cetera. So the numbers we're going to see now are not fully accurate because we haven't refined this and we've done it in literally under 5 minutes. Okay. So let's take a look. So again, just to remind to your question, the first way we've adapted CapEx is because we've chosen low automation level. The second way is that we've chosen light duty. And the third way is that we've removed things like heating and CO2 injection, which we didn't need anyway, but CO2 injection we removed, for example, okay? So that's the first way we can reduce CapEx to match your market. The moment of truth. Am I missing any answers? There we go. Okay. So typically when you finish a first model, it's rarely profitable unless you put in the right price for your product. And again, this requires market research, which you can do on the crop pricing tool. So again, this is a key part of how you make it work in your market is use the crop pricing tool, which we didn't do. And I recommend you do that first, but you can also update it here. Okay. But again, that's more of a revenue operational question, not exactly your question. So you can click on the CapEx part of the system. So if you have done any research on typical tech and systems, most of the solutions in our software right now are based on the proven, more established equipment companies that exist in Europe, Asia, or the USA. So they are on the higher end, to answer your question. It's mostly higher end ones. As we bring in new partners from around the world, for example, Hydro Farms in Egypt is a much cheaper one. We work with partners to bring in new ways to reduce these costs for more developing countries. But you can actually override things a little bit on your own. So you could say, okay, I think that I can cut this by $100 to produce it locally, okay? When I click this, that means that I can actually update the pricing. So now we've gotten to 11 years from 15 plus years because we've reduced that CapEx to meet the market needs. And that is a very realistic thing you're gonna have to do. And you can do similar things across other aspects of the business to reduce them. You can say, okay, we don't need a seeding machine necessarily because we've got low cost labor. We've got a 6-level nursery rack with lights. Maybe we don't want that. That's a pretty high-tech solution. So you can actually edit these things and remove them to adapt your CapEx to the local needs. When you contact us, when you're done with your plan, we will actually be able to make recommendations on suppliers. Even if we don't have them, we'll try to find suppliers in many cases that can meet your needs in your market. So I hope that answers your question, Keith. I tried to do as efficiently as possible, but that is how Agritecture Designer allows you to respond to the CapEx of your market.
Yeah, that was nice. It's and the numbers make sense. I mean, there's a range obviously, but I quite calculated based on what I had estimated already, and yeah, I can see a match in what the software found and what I've seen in the real market. So that's actually impressive, considering that Burkina Faso is a pretty rare area. So you probably extrapolated some of the data to get that, and it's still matched more or less.
Well, we appreciate you saying that, and our team spent a lot of time, multiple years, to prepare and model this data, and we still want people to treat it as an estimate and a starting point for rapid calculations, but we do try to put accurate information as much as possible out there. So I'm very happy to hear that, Keith. Are you going to sign up for the software?
Maybe. I'll see.
What's your hesitation?
Check it. Excuse me?
What's your hesitation?
Well, because I usually do the estimations myself. Like, it's true that it takes some time, but I like to break things down, like the first principle approach. So I've already done it, and I have like the exact data I need from the market because I already got it when I was there. So it's more like if I want to do something new and then not use that same amount of time, then I'll use the software. Like if I go in Ivory Coast or neighboring markets.
Yeah, that's a great point. Another reason you may want to use the software is, again, we will help you work with suppliers to get the best pricing. And our members of our software get certain benefits, faster quotes, potentially some savings with the suppliers. So it's another reason we try to make the benefits of working with us, ensure that the money you spent on subscribing to the software ends up being zero if you buy equipment through our partner network. So you can take a look at it. There's a 7-day free trial. Yeah, go ahead.
So can I ask just one question? Because like this makes it more interesting, because my assumption was you pay and you just use the software. But so what you mean is that you use the software, but then you can have the exchange with Agritecture to make sure that things make sense, and then you can have access to Agritecture suppliers. Is that what you meant?
That's exactly right. So I'm going to show it to you quickly because I think we're going to talk about it in a different webinar. But if you go to our partner network, you can see our equipment partners, and you can actually look around the regions of the world where they work. And we're constantly adding new partners. And you can look at details of those partners and what their capabilities are, okay, and which regions they work. And then we have a quoting guide about what's the best way to request a quote and to do that. And you can contact us to request a quote. Okay, so you can just reach out to us and you'll be able to, we will then have a person, Luke, who's our colleague, who is our client success manager, will actually connect you with suppliers and help you get the best quotes on your behalf. So this is a A to Z farm planning solution, not just getting the numbers.
Okay.
And actually, I want to show you something while we're talking about this, since we're just on it, and this is a relevant question. This is Batur Farms, okay? So this is a vertical farm in Riyadh, which is Saudi Arabia's largest vertical farm. It's just loading, okay? So it's about 2,500 square meters of bed space. And this is the quote from our first customer that used the software from A to Z. So we are getting more and more quotes now that more and more users are signing up, and we created a free trial platform, free trial pricing now. But I was so excited because the dream I've had is for people to use this to build farms. That's what we want. We want people to be successful and build the best farms possible. So he used the software, he took our classes, he modeled different things, and then he contacted us. We gave him 4 supplier recommendations, helped him with those conversations, and then he picked one supplier, built the farm. Now he's growing and selling. And this is Saudi Arabia's largest vertical farm. So Agritecture Designer works. It really does.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I think it changes a lot of things to like, it doesn't stop at the software, because I can see how much time I spent in finding suppliers, and like basically you will save a lot of time from getting to the idea to the actual farm being completed. So that has a lot of value.
You really get it. I mean, we consider it a win-win-win. Okay, so the entrepreneur, the farm planner, you win because you're basically doing a feasibility study at a fraction of the cost. Based on Khalid Shokair's cost for feasibility studies, by using us, it was 25% cheaper than the feasibility study he would have had to do locally. So that's a big win. Plus, he gets all these learnings, all these best practices, all these benefits, and again, some beneficial pricing. Number 2, it's a win for the supplier. Suppliers are our customers too. They really don't like getting asked questions about what should I grow, how should I do it, etc. They want a sale. They want people who are qualified. They want people who are ready. So they sign up to partner with us because we qualify you through the experience on the software, right? You're doing your market research, you're modeling your farm, you talk to us. And once you go through that process, then we will introduce you to the suppliers. So the suppliers are going to get a quality request. In fact, they're getting sort of a mini business plan, which they can speed up the way they give you the quote, which is also good for you. And then the third part is Agritecture gets a commission when a sale goes through. So for us, even though we're not getting as much on consulting, we're still getting a benefit for this capital we've invested and the costs we have for the software and the time that we spend to help educate people and do that. So it's a win-win-win for all of us. And it's just a smarter way to plan these farms.
Cool. Yeah.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate that. Appreciate your time. And feel free to join future ones if you have any other questions and reach out to us. I hope to see you at least give the software a try. Anybody have any other questions? I hope so. Let's see here. Hi, everyone. We've got Harvest Limited. Hi, Vincent. Nice to see you here. Charlotte. Nice to see you. Charlotte, do you have any questions? Are you still around? Did I lose you? There you are, Charlotte. There you go. I love that. Raising your hand. Perfect. You're on mute, so I'm asking you to unmute here, Charlotte.
There we go.
And there we go. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good.
Oh, sorry, I just cut you off. I'm so sorry. I was trying to put the hand down. I'm so sorry. There we go.
Unmute myself again. All right.
Remove hand. That's a lower hand. Okay, there we go. Hi, Charlotte. Nice to meet you. I'm Henry.
Hi, nice to meet you. So I had a question about how because obviously you have a very large international presence and you're able to collect data from all over. And I'm just wondering how you approach that and collecting all of this data to make an accurate software program.
Like, how did we build it? How did we get the data?
How are you like staying up to date on the data? How are you how are you getting the data?
Well, I don't want to reveal all the ways on how we're getting the data, but I will say, as consultants, we are most active in North America, Europe, and the Middle East, with some business in Southeast Asia. So those are our key markets. But I would say North America, Europe, and the Middle East, we understand those markets quite well because we've been consulting for 10 years. So we've done a lot of market studies. We've had to contact suppliers to supply the farms that we're doing feasibility studies for. So just imagine if you've done 10 years of feasibility studies across the world, you not only have a methodology, but you also have a giant data set of suppliers, yields, market data, labor data, et cetera. And so we were able to pull that information together and create an accessible software. Now, the models, we've had to manipulate the data to make it adapt to different scales, and again, allow you, the user, to adapt it to your market. But that's really the short answer of how we got that much data. And I would say in some markets, it's weaker, but again, over time, it will get stronger.
Definitely.
But because you can add to it yourself, right? You can customize it yourself. Even if our data is a little weaker, as long as the fundamentals are there, you can actually make it work anywhere in the world. And that's why we've launched as a global product, and we have global customers.
Okay. Thank you. That was a good clarification. Feasibility studies.
You're a mushroom consultant, right?
I am, yes.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So we are launching our mushroom model in the software soon. So maybe my colleague David might want to talk to you a bit about that. And there may be an opportunity for us to work together a little bit. But my real question is, we're sort of like playing with an idea of making a version of our software that's for consultants. That's a little bit different and for you, and something that you can use for, light feasibility studies, conversations, selling, accessing a network of partners, et cetera. How do you work? How do you get not just the data? Obviously, you've got some experience, but how do you work on feasibility studies? How do you work on suppliers? Which markets do you work in? And does the idea from a high level sound interesting to you to have a digital tool that you as a consultant could use?
Interesting question. So yes, to answer your question, the last question, yes, having a more high-tech system to help the consulting is definitely something that I would like to do, and something that I would be interested in helping to create, to develop, or whatever that looks like. My consulting has been more on the lower end. So the way that I'm finding clients, the way that I'm kind of conducting my business is through, the first piece is education. So I operate with a handful of different companies, and we host educational retreats and week-long courses. And a lot of times those people who come to those, they want to start a farm at home. So it's really just through personal networking right now. But to reach a larger audience, technology is definitely something that would help.
Yeah, so I high level, our idea that we're just brainstorming a little bit, which I love your feedback on, is that actually, you could use this as part of your workshops. So it could be also something that you run workshops, because we do workshops with this as well, right? Where we bring in people, they register, they get access, and then they can use it. And we want to sort of have agritecture representatives. So, we want to teach you how it works. We want you to be able to represent us, but also you, right? It's your consulting business, but sort of bring people under the umbrella, because it's a platform. Like, we don't have to do every single consulting deal in the world. That's not the point. We want to help more farms get started. And this is, in the end, a way to get estimates and to connect with suppliers. And again, we that's sort of how we're thinking about it. So if you don't mind, we'll follow up with you and just see if there's some interest to brainstorm the idea with you a little bit further, because we're sort of seeing it as a bit of a training to begin with, and then allowing people to use it longer term, obviously. So that's what we're thinking about. And if you're open to it, my colleagues, I'm sure will note your name and reach out to you.
Definitely. I would love to talk further.
Okay. Do you have any more questions today, or did I answer your questions?
I have a million more questions, but it's going to be for a later call.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're going to have these every 2 weeks. So, it's always good to be on Wednesday at 12 noon every 2 weeks. So it should be easy, and it'll always be announced in the newsletter or on my social media, our social media. So thanks for your question. If you have more later on and nobody else asks questions, you're welcome to ask me. We've got 30 minutes approximately more left. But thank you, Charlotte. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, thank you, Henry.
Okay. Let's see. Anyone else raise their hand? Any other questions? So again, you can ask me anything about the industry. You can ask me about the software. You can ask me really anything. That's what literally Ask Me Anything is about. Okay. Hi, Keith. You're back. Great.
Yeah, yeah, since no one asking another question,
Sure.
I have one. I'm not sure if it's on topic, but it's more in the type of hydroponic systems that are around. Because like these last days, I was thinking, is there a way to have hydroponic systems that require less frequent sterilization and cleaning? A bit like aquaponic system where you work with beneficial microorganisms, and they're the one keeping in check the unwanted microorganisms. But in hydroponics, it's more like you try to avoid unwanted microorganisms to come, and when they come, it's like everything's bad. You need to like stop the operation and then clean everything, sterilize everything, and start again. So is there a way to have an hydroponic system that looks more like an ecosystem rather than a sterilized system? So yeah, so it's more technical question, but yeah, what's your thoughts on?
I'm not the most technical person on our team, so I'm sure my colleagues are listening and we may be able to answer that. I do want to highlight one thing, actually two things. Okay, so the first thing is, in addition to Agritecture Designer, we have another service which is a little bit less known, which we also launched during COVID because of the lack of being able to meet people. And this is called Ask Agritecture. And so you can book us at a much lower fee than our typical fees for an introductory conversation. You can ask us anything. Okay, so just agritecture.com/ask, and you book a call and you can ask us anything. So if you want to speak to one of my technical team members about something, you could do that. And we typically allow people to do it, once, because it's much lower than our consulting rate. So that's the first one. The second thing is sandponics, which is the first thing that comes to mind to me because I just saw it recently in Egypt. And these are not the most beautiful sandponics images, but essentially the sand itself will be a filtration bed, and you allow, again, for that sort of biology to thrive, just like you would an aquaponics system. But at the one I went to in Egypt, they only did aquaponics in the, it was like sort of in the ground. So these are containers that are raised. But here, this is it. This looks like the one I saw, but a little bit more attractive. So you make these big beds of sand that you dig into the ground. And then again, there's a place where it drains into a main reservoir, just like an aquaponics system. And that reservoir can be filled with fish. But in the heat of the summer, when the tilapia fish, for example, don't survive well, they actually just use pigeon manure and various organic nutrient solutions. So again, they're not trying to fight that. What's great about the sand is it filters it out really well. So again, I'm really not speaking as technically as my colleagues, but basically, the multiple filtration beds you need in aquaponics, you don't need in sandponics, because the sand itself and the way it's structured will actually filter it out from the top, and only that beneficial bacteria that the microbes want will go through. And then you recirculate that. And there's basically a layer that will go on top of the sand that's sort of like greenish. But again, you don't need to necessarily clean it up. You can sort of just like change the sand. And in a place where there's abundance of sand, that's a very good method. And I think sandponics as a principle can be used with other substrates as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be sand, although sand is one of the better ones. But sort of as a principle, I think it's something you should investigate. And hopefully that gives you some answer to your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Hi, Nadeem.
It's me, David.
Oh, hi, David. So David is our lead agronomist, everyone. So you get to meet David. I'm sure he's going to attempt to answer your question better than answer your question better than I did.
So I just wanted to, just make a short comment, Keith, regarding your question. There's, as far as I'm aware, there's kind of two schools of thought within hydroponics. One, as you said, focuses on keeping the nutrient solution and everything very, very clean and sterile, the whole system sterile. And then there's a second school of thought which tries to sort of like create more of an ecosystem, a balanced ecosystem. So the problem is that there's not a lot of knowledge about what the sort of like the microflora and the bacteria which are in the hydroponic systems are. There's been some research. I know Ohio State University was doing some research and some studies with hydroponic operators to understand better the like microbial communities within hydroponic systems. I don't know, that was several years ago. I don't know if that's information that has been published as of yet, but it might be something you want to look into. But as you said, there are definitely like kind of two schools of thoughts within hydroponics, and there's more companies that are just as sort of like there's more companies now that are focused on understanding the microbiology around soils. There's also several companies that are looking into the microbiology around hydroponics. And so I think this is a field that's going to be developing much more into the future. So there's likely some good research out there that you can look into.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, David. Appreciate that. Thanks for being here. Okay. Does anyone else have questions, or what other questions you have? We've got some time here. We got great questions today. Thank you so much to the questions so far. I've really enjoyed them, and I'm really happy to see this kind of participation. We want to really educate and share, and also help you understand the value of the software if it's of interest to you. But definitely, we love to answer questions. Maybe Vincent. Vincent, where are you from? Or Serge? Rodwa. Just raise your hand. You click the raise hand button, and then I can know that it's you. There we go. See, just takes a little bit of nudging. Hi, Vincent. How are you? I'm going to ask you to unmute here.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to be with you guys. I'm Vince Paradis from Harvest. For those who don't know me, we're one of Agritecture's equipment partners. I'm based in Montreal, but we also have operations with our partners in France. So we're basically covering North America and Europe. Maybe a quick question for you, Henry, while we're on this chat there. I was wondering if Agritecture eventually considers or is considering at some point farming as a service, as an additional add-on service to your offering?
So the first thing is that, Agritecture really loves to plan farms. We've offered some support to farms historically. We even operated a farm in New York for 2.5 years for one of our clients that was Sky Vegetables. And I think in New York City, with the team we had there, it was possible for us to provide farming as a service. And I'm really proud of what Yara and Ajit and that team did, because we took a greenhouse that was not profitable and we made it profitable. But it was really a lot of work and time consuming. And in the end, wasn't the best business case for us, because our business is really based on answering people's questions when they're planning farms all around the world. So you can imagine that there's a lot of variety and demand for that. I also really like the global variety myself, because I'm a global citizen, having grown up in a lot of places. So it's part of the sort of DNA I bring into the company and I try to strive for. So again, we sort of tried it, and I think in New York, it could possibly be something, or if we had multiple offices around the world, we could do it. There is a possibility of doing a sort of virtual farming as a service. Again, I think that I could see us bringing that into the software to some extent in the future, but my preference would be to have experts like Charlotte on mushrooms, or people with different skills from different areas, and to build a sort of consultant network that people can access for those kinds of things. But what I will say is we do have one partner already that we've added to the software, which does provide farming as a service in the Middle East, in the GCC, and in the United States. And that is Greener Crop. And that's our first partner. And by the way, thank you for joining our partner network. But that's our first partner that provides farming as a service. So they provide certain virtual support in some of the markets and in-person support in the GCC. And so that can go really far for them in the GCC, but I think where they're moving towards is more of a virtual support package, including covering things like consumables you would need, troubleshooting, farming as a service, as you would understand it. So if someone plans their farm on Agritecture Designer and they select Greener Crop, they can definitely get a number of solutions, including Greener Crop has their own equipment solutions that they work with, or the farming as a service may be a possible standalone for them. In addition to that, iFarm has a software that we're talking to them about that they've already utilized in maybe 20 different farms around the world. And we're talking to them about possibly bringing them to the software as well, so that after you finish, you could do that. Now, it's important for us that people have options. So we want to give people multiple options, which is why we haven't rolled this out too aggressively or too quickly. But I would say in the next 6 months, you're going to see a lot more farming as a service solutions. As long as we can vet them and include them in there, they'll be available. So it's definitely something we want to provide for our, I actually see a lot of other types of partnerships in there too. We're talking to, I'll give all the details, but we have a lot of different solutions for planning your farm and taking care of your farm within the softwares. We consider this a platform for the industry's best to come together to get accurate knowledge and to plan successful farms. Does that answer your question, Vincent?
Yeah. Thank you. Good to know that things are coming up. I mean, so many, new requests that we're getting oftentimes are people that are not used to managing a farm, and they want to get accustomed to it, and having sometimes a people on the ground really, doing the work for 3, 6 months, 12 months so that they get acquainted for it, and then they take over after that, is something that I see more and more interest from, especially from folks that are changing careers or really jumping into this with minimal agronomical knowledge. I mean, we can support them with our recipes, with a lot of our own tools, but in some cases they need hands-on for a longer period of time before they feel comfortable really jumping in. But very good to know that all these things are coming up on the platform and through Agritecture.
Yeah, so thank you for that question, actually, and those thoughts. We love to hear from anyone about what's happening and where the needs are, so that we can try to develop solutions to that as efficiently as possible. But that makes total sense to me. I mean, I'm in Dubai right now, and in the GCC, most of the customers don't want to operate the farms. So I think that's why Greener Crop has had a lot of success here in the UAE, for example, because they will build the farm and operate the farm for the customers here, which is quite a tempting service. So we are going to launch more of those. Vincent, if you have any leads like that are struggling, be sure to talk to Luke about it, because again, we need to be able to find a solution for you. There are partners that are gone through the process like you have and are now listed on the platform specifically. And they are there and they're fully included, but then there's ones that are just sort of percolating again and started. So sometimes there's ones you don't see yet that could work. And I just want to find your profile so we can showcase it to our audience here a little bit. So let's just take a look here so that we can give. So this is, again, part of the partner network part of it. And so this is Harvest Limited. And this is what it looks like when a partner joins our network. We talk to them about, what their solutions are, what your solutions are. We talk to them about the typical timeline from sale to installation. And we also give a much richer, there you are, Vincent. So we give a much richer profile of the company that you can learn more about it. And you can understand a little bit more about their experience. And this is sort of how we go through and talk about it. And I'm happy to see you have a sustainability and ESG section, because many companies don't fill that in yet. So good for you, Vincent, and kudos to that. So this is how you can do that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you can request a quote, and it's going to go through the process of connecting with Luke and making sure you're ready, which I know was your question earlier, Keith. So thank you for being a partner, Vincent. We're really looking forward to helping you get more qualified leads and getting more farms built. And who knows, maybe somebody on this call could be a fit for you, inshallah.
Thanks, Henry.
Thanks. Hi, Radwa, how are you?
Hi, Henry. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Hope all is well. I'm Radwa. I'm an architect specialized in landscape architecture. I own a small farm, but in a very primitive way. And I'm really looking forward to upgrade it to into an agri-tech farm. But I have a question. Ever since I attended your workshop, I'm fond. I have subscribed in the agri. If you remember me, I don't know.
Yes, I remember you in Cairo, right?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
So nice to
And
see, I see your picture here, so it's good.
and ever since, almost daily, I go through the software, and I see all the tools and how you have created a complete network, starting from the logo, helping out the project, starting from the logo, and providing suppliers, providing investors to really low budget startups and so on. And ever since, I was talking to everybody I know from farm owners about your software. Really, I would love to represent you and promote, because I really believe in it. But I have a question. In Egypt, we are very high polluted country, especially in Cairo. And we have a population of 100 million people. And the young people, they really would love to start small urban farms, but they are very low on budget. I only can imagine that the well-established farm, they can afford to subscribe to the software. They can afford to get equipment and all the tech to be tech enabled and so on. How can we help those very low budget farmers to start and to create their own container farms, vertical farms? How is it doable? Thank you.
Radwa, first of all, thank you so much for participating in the workshop in Cairo. It's so nice to meet you.
I loved it.
I felt your enthusiasm and your engagement. I'm so happy to hear that you've been advocating for, helping us achieve our dream, because even though it's still expensive right now, it's so much cheaper than it was. You know what I mean? So, but I understand that in Egypt, it's a different context, as it is in Africa and many other parts of the world. So, we want to get there as a company. We want to get there, but I just want to share the business reasons why it's difficult. We are able to reduce the cost of the data that we typically would charge a lot of money for, and simplify that process, which took us a lot of time and money to do. We have a full staff managing this, including David and Luke and these people I mentioned, Nadeem, who's here on the chat. And those costs are difficult to get the return on investment if there's not, equipment that's got some capex of notability, right? Because we get our money back for reducing the cost for you from giving the suppliers the best leads possible. That's how the business model works. So for now, I think in the short term, it's going to be very difficult. But in the future, you could imagine that the volume of the people in Egypt and the people who want these kinds of farms, rooftop gardens, low-tech solutions, solutions that work in the market, that volume is also a very appealing business case, right? If you could have packages that are ordered and easily delivered, that still could work. It's a little bit of a different approach than what we have, right? Because giving the customer service to each of those people is going to be very expensive and difficult. But I could see some of the suppliers that we're speaking to having more low-cost solutions that could be in packages where maybe it's less of the service side and it's more of just, shop and order, get your business plan. It's all online. Because if it was all digital and didn't have a physical aspect of us helping with the suppliers, I think we could do a lot more of that. There has to be some equipment for the business case to be there. So it's a little bit difficult for us to do just pure gardens because there's not a lot of capital cost to that. But I do think that we are passionate and we want to go in that direction. Just to give you some idea on the consulting side, like Agritecture has impact projects that we do. So we've worked with a refugee camp in Lebanon. We clearly didn't get significant consulting dollars for that. And we helped design that and design simplified hydroponic systems for that. And that farm is built. And these refugees who have been there for 7 years now can grow some of their own food. and learn skills. And that's called Farms Not Arms. If you want to follow them on Instagram, you can see their journey and what they're doing. David has been to Kosovo to help existing farmers that have greenhouses think about new technology. We had a woman from Gabon that won a World Bank grant of $10,000 and contacted us, clearly couldn't afford a significant, this was actually before the software would have helped her, but couldn't afford a significant consulting fee. So we provided a discounted one and got her farm built. So we do try to have an impact beyond just premium, expensive farms. But to be transparent about the business case, we have to sort of start high and move a little bit into the lower cost solutions. Now, my vision to speed up that process, right? There could be a way to speed up that process. For example, you could have a government or a development agency or a particular investor or even a supplier that says, you know what, we believe that our solution for rooftops in Cairo or our solutions for gardens or small scale greenhouses is so valuable for Egypt, but we want to use your software to make sure it gets to the max amount of people. They could actually pay us and we would do the work, right? They could pay us and they could be the client, and then we could actually do the work for those potential customers. And we could, in many cases, if the government funded it, we could reduce the costs, right, for an entire country. But we are a for-profit business, a mission-driven business. So sometimes we have to make tough decisions. But if you have, let's keep in touch, because I'm very passionate, as you know, about Egypt. I think there's huge potential. And I would love to get there. I would love to get to the vision that you're describing, and it's a vision I share with you.
Okay, thank you so much. And it's a great idea that we can go through the government. I have some connections.
Okay.
Yes, in that field, maybe yes, the government
can
can
draft a proposal.
sponsor.
Yeah, exactly.
Sponsor your software. Yes. Okay.
So the idea is that the government could sponsor it, and we could make it free for people to sign up to a certain number, or if they use a code or whatever, for a certain number of them, and we would bring in suppliers that could deliver on that locally that we've vetted.
Exactly.
So that could happen, and is a direction that this solution could go to make sure it's accessible to other groups.
Okay, but meanwhile, I'm talking about you and your software to every big farm I know. And hopefully they will contact you soon and subscribe. Yes, hopefully.
Thank you so much. You already are an Agritecture ambassador. Look at you. That's wonderful. So nice to meet you. And I'll see you soon next year in Cairo again, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you.
And Ramadan Mubarak as well.
Thank you so much. It's tomorrow. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. So nice of you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're about wrapping up here. Does anyone have a last question that they'd like to ask me? I guess we've got, do you also help with international logistics when dealing with suppliers? Keith, I think that is possible. I don't want to put too much on Luke's plate, but I think it's more that between the supplier and us and you, we can sort of try to do that the best way. I mean, we don't deliver the stuff, but we need to talk about delivery time. So I don't know exactly what your question is with the logistics, but I can imagine getting to Burkina Faso is quite difficult. So we're here to do our best to help the whole process go through, and we try to encourage the suppliers to do the same as well. And to go to your question, I think, Vincent, for example, some of the suppliers do provide additional service where they'll be there for the build and a little bit of training time afterwards. Okay, we've got one last one. Let's go here. Hello, Miss. Can you introduce yourself? Hi.
Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Tsulufelo. I'm from South Africa, but you can call me T. So everybody calls me because my name is a bit of a tongue twister. But I wanted to. Okay, so I have a few things that I want to say, but I particularly want to ask. So, do you have some sort of like a plan or like an agenda or like, I don't know, like a course outline, for the lack of a better word, to like help me understand what journey we're taking in the bi-weekly calls that we'll be having? Because I do want to ask some questions, but I also recognize that I don't know enough to ask any questions now. So I'm hoping that I can like sort of like save myself for when I have actually gone through the software, because I literally saw this like on your social media and then I joined the call. So yeah, I really do want to save myself for maybe like lesson 2 in inverted commas. But I want to echo, I think, some of the stuff that's been said, because I'm from South Africa and I know my business partners on the call, and we've been trying to like design and build like a vertical farm, multi-purpose, in the sense that growing different types of crops. But the cost element has been something, a bit of a shocker. And I saw when you were doing the model earlier, there was like a $30 million farm. I was just like, oh my word, in rands,
that was a big one,
that
but
would be like half that would be like 500 million. So we're looking at something that feels a little like out of our scope, but I'm happy that the lady from Egypt was also talking about, you know, how do we work it around that we're doing stuff that's a little less high tech or high cost, because we also do work with smallholder farmers. So it would be interesting to sort of work out a model to see how we can almost like diversify, so have a variety of smaller farms that then equates to something a little bigger. But I just was wanting to ask about the course outline so that I could then just work my brain around, you know, like,
Sure.
what am I supposed to prepare for, and then I'll have better questions in the future.
Sure. Thank you for that. So my colleague Nico, who's on the call, I'll go through the course outline briefly. I like the idea that it's kind of like a little bit of a training for you as you're going through the program. That's as you sign up. Although these webinars are open, that would be the best thing if we could work together. Because if you're using the software and you're going through the webinars, you're going to really benefit the most, almost like a little accelerator. So I'll just tell you briefly just some of what's coming up. So the next one is April 5th, and that's going to be run by Nadeem. And this is going to be AD tips and tricks. So this is actually going to be how do you build your models and going into the software and tips and tricks for maximizing it. And he's basically built most of the software from the software side of it. He's our program manager, our product manager. So he's incredibly knowledgeable about how it works and how to refine it and get the most of it. After that, we're going to have Luke, who's going to talk about the partner network and the suppliers, how to engage with them, knowing about them, showcasing them. May 3rd is David, our agronomist, who you heard earlier about crop selection and the market research tool. So the next 3 coming up are really the introductions, and then we're going to get into some of our partners, including iFarm on May 17th and May 31st, advanced modeling. Now, we'll make sure that actually it's a good idea. We'll make sure that the list of the webinars goes out to as many people as possible so that you can choose to register for all of them and get that organized. So stay tuned for that. But Nico will make sure, my colleague Nico will make sure that you get it. We just need to make sure it's more public facing, right? So clean it up a little bit so it's easier for all of you. Now, to answer your other question, you need to ask yourself your question about what the market wants, right? So when you log into the software, the key question is not how do you build a vertical farm? Key question is what crops to grow for your market to solve a specific problem that matters to you and matters to the customer. So what's missing? Is it pesticide-free product? Is it that there's too much water use? Is it that there's too many imports? And is it that it's too expensive? And if that's the case, which crops and how many people are doing that? So one of the first steps and one of the first classes in the software is about market research. And that's where I always recommend people begin. We all get excited about the technology, but before you think about vertical farming, think about the crops. And then we start to match the right solution to that. You may actually be better suited to build in your market a different kind of farm, a greenhouse, a high-tech greenhouse, a low-tech greenhouse, maybe even an outdoor farm. And it's important that you don't focus on vertical farming, as a starting point, but you think about the market as the starting point. And if you take our online classes, we will set you up for thinking the right way. And then the software itself will let you do that market research within the software so that you can then start to model out your greenhouse or vertical farm. And there are some ways to reduce the costs for vertical farms in certain markets. Again, what you saw on that estimate is a high-level estimate of quite a high-tech, medium automation vertical farm. So that's why it was quite expensive. Vertical farming is always quite expensive, but there are ways to reduce that cost and simplify it in some markets, but there's trade-offs, right? If you reduce the cost, you affect quality. But again, in your market, we have to adapt things a little bit more as well. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Great. Well, I am so excited because I had just such an amazing group today, and I think you were so engaged. I really appreciate all the questions. They were all awesome, and I appreciate those of you who have signed up for the software and been supporters. But either way, Agritecture is a community, so we're so happy you're here, and we hope you gain some insight from us today. Now, if you want to do us one favor, if you benefited from this today, please post somewhere on social media about Agritecture, about me, about the software, and that you enjoyed this webinar. That would make a huge deal to us and let other people be aware of it. In the end, all of the webinars will always be posted at agritecture.com/events. Okay, so that's also an interesting link to guide people to, because we'll always do that and post them there with the details of it, including many other events. And of course, our newsletter will always get the next one in your inbox in advance. So again, thank you so much. I got to get on another work call here. It's been a nonstop day, but I really appreciate all of you. And we'll see you in 2 weeks at the next Ask Us Anything webinar. Take care. Bye.